Today Live, I'm Randy Robison, and it's Valentine's Day. And I don't say that to you as much as I say it to myself because I'm the guy that always forgets about Valentine's Day. But luckily, my wife is a loving and patient woman. And so we're gonna talk about a topic that is very suiting Valentine's Day today. And I have a guest on Skype right now who can help me out. So you don't want to listen to the guy that forgets Valentine's Day talk about marriage for half an hour. So we're gonna go to an expert. We're gonna go to Nina Roesner, who is the author of a book called 12 Truths to Change Your Marriage, as well as the Respect Dare. And you know what? This is me punting a little bit because I, it's the grace of God that I have a wonderful marriage of almost 29 years now, because I'm not that marriage expert, so I rely on others. Nina, you're the one that's going to help me out today. How are you doing?
Well, it sounds like you don't need any help. If things are great, that's awesome. And
I
we tend to not know much when we don't have the big issues. So
yeah,
good for you.
yeah. Well, I attribute it more to my wife than I do myself. I mean, I try, but it's kind of some running jokes probably aren't that funny to her, but she's patient with me, like forgetting Valentine's Day and anniversaries and things like that. I'm so bad about that. I hardly know what day it is when I get up in the morning. Anyway, aside from that, we have people online with us right now on YouTube, on Facebook, on Twitch, and on Twitter and Periscope. So you guys can jump right in here, ask your questions, leave your comments, contribute to the conversation. And Nina, I want to turn it over to you because you got 12 truths that can change our marriage. And I think maybe just one would probably help a lot of people. So let's jump right into this. Tell us what we need to know.
Well, let's just jump into the real biggie, and that is what you believe about God is going to impact every single relationship in your life. So that's a huge deal. I was driving in the car today listening to Andy Stanley, who is a preacher in Atlanta, and he was talking about, again, because we always hear this over and over again. He's talking about what happened to Christ on the cross, what he did, and just the grace that he showed the thief that was right next to him, and how grace is the thing that prevails. And in marriage, we look at that and we go, yeah, but that was Jesus. That doesn't necessarily apply to me because it's okay that I'm not perfect and it's okay that God shows grace, but, I want what I want when I want it. And that just doesn't work really well in relationships. But the best thing about it is the more that we come to know Christ personally, the more deeply we are impacted by that, so much so that we can see our spouse the way that God sees us, which then, this is the key, helps us not take things personally when our spouse messes up. Because when we take an arrow or we interpret something that isn't even an arrow as a dig towards us, then we start this process of negative thinking that really damages the relationship. But all of this really begins with, what do we truly believe about God? And so that's a core of everything in the book, honestly.
Let me play devil's advocate for just a second because
Okay.
we know Christians who get divorces, and we also know people who are not Christians who have lasting marriages. What do you think's going on in both cases, really?
Yeah, so there's a number of reasons why people get divorced. Usually it's because of something within us, and don't hear this as blame, but you and I both been married almost 29 years, and I've been a communication coach since 1989. So that's a long time to do anything, right? For both of us. In 100% of the conflicts I see and the difficulties in marriage, both people are contributing to the situation. And I hear things like, well, yeah, but she's being beaten. And yeah, that may be true. And you can't blame a woman for that action that this person takes on her, but you can say you have choices. You can choose to leave. And if you say you can't, you have to realize that's a choice that gives away your power to another person who you then rely on for your happiness. And there's varying extremes of that within marriage, and a lot of times it involves money. But those conflicts, a lot of times we take things personally and we don't take ownership of our contribution to them. And when we do that, we're able to apply skills differently. We're able to see God at work, and we're able to change the relationship into something that is glorifying to Him. And it keeps us out of divorce court. I've seen this happen with hundreds of women. We have a course we do, and I personally know and interact with these women who are this close to filing or beaten down, some of them suicidal, because of the state of their marriage. And we see God turn things around for them.
When you say beaten down, you're speaking metaphorically, not physically, I'm assuming.
Yeah, we encourage women that are in domestic violence situation where there's actual physical violence to get help with that from those folks.
Yeah.
One thing we do know is that and this is the stat off of the CDC website, 100% of physical domestic violence things include verbal abuse. And so what that can say to us is if we don't handle those verbal things in our marriage, the possibility for it escalating is there.
Yeah.
And the problem is we don't know what to do. We don't know how to handle that. And it comes from a lack of boundaries for ourselves, and a lack of respect for ourselves, and a lack of respect for other people in the way we communicate.
Yeah. Now, one thing that comes into play, I think, in the church a lot, and it kind of can tie into some of what you're talking about, is the idea of submission. And I know in some of the more certain churches, you hear this idea that women should just submit, and it's like a carte blanche. It's like whatever the man says goes, right, because you're the woman. Mm-hmm. Is that really scriptural?
No. And it shreds my heart to hear pastors, and I've heard them say that no matter what he says, you are to submit. But the reality is that you need to understand the context of the Bible and Jesus in totality. Jesus came through a woman. He revealed himself first to a woman whose voice and credibility in that culture had zero credit, but she was right. They were right? So you have that element. And then on top of that, you have the entire concept of what does it mean to submit in the first place. And it's putting yourself under authority, which, in a marriage, you have it's one flesh, and God talks about headship. Christ is the head of the church, as the husband is the head of the wife. And the husband's supposed to live in an understanding way and lay his life down for her. And when he's not doing these things, you can't submit to unbiblical behavior. Mm-hmm. Acts 5:29 tells us that we submit to God, not man. And that applies to women. Otherwise, if the only thing in the Bible that applies to women is that submission verse, and the rest of it's irrelevant. If we're supposed to make our husband our God, the rest of the Bible is irrelevant.
Yeah. Yeah, that's absolutely true. And it's interesting. You say the husband is the head of the wife as Christ is the head of the church. What kind of head was Christ? He was a servant head. Yeah. Like you said, he laid down his life. Mm-hmm. And so when I hear some of these people, men, get all totalitarian towards the women, I want to go, are you laying down your life for your wife? Are you serving as Christ served? Because that's the definition of head of the household scripturally. So I appreciate you bringing that point up. You also touched on some of the stresses, finances being one of them. What are the most kind of common and easy to remedy stresses that you see in marriages?
Wow. That's a really big question.
Yeah, I left you a lot of latitude there.
Yeah. So usually you have a spender and a saver, right? So you have a values conflict, and that's what usually these things are. So people aren't on the same page. And what's really important in marriage is you don't look at what's happening on the surface. You dig under that. So when you have someone who is a spender, there's probably something in their childhood where there was restriction, where there was control, those kinds of things. And so getting to know that element and understanding that is what actually helps the money situation, believe it or not. Because what we see on the surface, it's never about that. It's really what's going on underneath. And in marriage, we have this beautiful opportunity to really help each other heal from our wounds. And like you were saying about being this ultimate servant, you look at the best corporations that are out there where the leaders serve their people, and that is the thing. They're open to other people's ideas. They consider themselves, their number one role as to help their people achieve and be wildly successful in the thing that they're doing. And that's the intention, I think, that God has for marriage. That's what Jesus did for us, is he paid this price so we could do this thing, because without it, not possible, right? But when you're looking at how does this show up in marriage, on a minutia thing, I have some issues with accusation. So, bullying, some things with teachers when I was young. So those are wounds in me. And one day, my husband and I are in the kitchen where I'm making marinara, and I make a really good marinara. But he's doing something and I'm making something, and my phone buzzes. It's on the table in the kitchen. I go over and I pick it up, and I'm looking at it, and I interact with the horse guy about when I can get out and get a lesson, because he had a cancellation. I don't get to go very often, hardly at all. But there was an opening, so I had figured that out. It took like 30, 45 seconds. I come back in, and my husband's got a funny look on his face. He said, "Well, who was that?" And I said, "Well, it's Hank. You're setting up the horse thing." And he goes, "Oh, I didn't realize you had a texting relationship with him." And I pause, and all these alarm bells are going off in me. I'm not doing anything wrong, right? But I've been accused in my head. My husband wasn't meaning that. He was feeling threatened about himself, his own stuff. But I didn't know that at the time. But all this stuff happens, and I'm like, okay, I'm not going to give voice to that, because that's not going to be helpful. So, Lord, what's going on with me that this is my response? And so I go spend some time with God, follow a process we teach people in our classes. And then I come back into the conversation, and I said, "Hey, do you mind if we talk about this? You seem something when that happened." And he says, "You know what? That's my own stuff." He says, "I've been in Poland, I've been traveling. We had to go deal with my mom, and she's not doing so great. Up there for 10 days, it was really stressful. We're back here, and we got all this stuff we got to do." He said, I miss you. And I looked at him, and I said, "Oh, you know what? I just had exactly everything that you just said brought to mind for me, and I miss you too." And he said, "So what do you want to do about that?" And I said, "Let's plan some dates." And so that's what we did. And that sounds like, okay, whatever. But if I had reacted with that accusation, with a, "How dare you think this about me? You're attacking my character, blah, blah," if I'd have done that, I would have missed an opportunity to have an intimate connection with my husband. And it wasn't even his intent to verbally hurt me. So we missed those.
That is, I think, is bigger than people even realize, because those
Yeah.
moments happen. We have those opportunities on a routine basis. And the natural thing is to, again, attack it at the surface and be like, "What do you mean by that?" And that just can escalate and bring out the worst feelings that, in both of you. And, those kind of small things become really big things in a lot of relationships. You said that you have a process that you teach to people. I want to hear that. But first, I do want to bring to attention to our viewers that we are in our Water for Life campaign, and missions is huge. It's a big deal to me. I've been to the mission field, and I've seen what a huge difference it makes when we take food and clean water into different areas. Right now, we're in our Water for Life. So I want to hear that process, because I think that's very important for all of us. But I want to hear it right after this. We'll be back in 20 seconds.
You can save lives when you become a part of Water for Life. Just go to lifetoday.org/live and know that every gift makes a difference. Be sure to request Randy's book, Rise Above, with any gift toward Water for Life.
All right, so do request my book, and I'd love to send it to you for free with any gift towards Water for Life. Right now, we're talking to another author, Nina Roesner, and she has written a book, many books on marriage. The latest one's called 12 Truths to Change Your Marriage. And Nina, you were just talking about a process that you teach that you went through with your husband where there was a potential conflict that you didn't take the bait on, but instead you did something, then came back, and it led to a beautiful moment, and I'm guessing some really good dates for you and your husband. Tell me about that process.
It's going to sound really simple.
Good.
And
I need simple.
yeah, well, it's also hard. It's
Oh,
simple but hard,
okay.
and it takes a while. When I first started doing this, the first step is to stop talking. Just don't say anything.
Mm,
So I have this boundary for myself where I am not going to engage in communication when I'm upset.
mm,
So I will leave. I will say, you know what, I need a few minutes. And golly, sometimes when I first started this, it took me like 3 days with some things. And then I got to wait, hold on. And I do this in the middle of conversation. My family thinks I'm nuts anyway, because I'm a communication coach. So I'm always doing weird stuff with them. I'd be like, hang on. And I just go inside myself for a minute. And then now I can do it rather quickly. But this particular time, it took me like 10 minutes, 15 maybe, to walk through it. And something happens that feels like something happened when we were a kid. And so it unleashes this yuck emotion, and we over emote or get triggered, even if it's a thing that, yeah, we would feel something about. But we have a reason for doing that. We have a reason for the grace of God not getting out, not being able to hear the Holy Spirit and see our husband or wife the way that God does. So what is that about? So here's our process. The first thing that we got to do is name our feeling. So
mm,
what does that mean? I mean, most people can name 3 feelings: happy, sad, mad, and that doesn't work. There's 30 emotions that if you're going to be a mature and emotionally mature adult, you need to be able to understand them and articulate them. And we do a terrible job in our culture teaching our children how to do this, and we don't know how to do it ourselves. And so in our course, we work through these emotions. We spend some time with people learning how to talk about them and ask them questions so that they can start naming them on their own. So naming it actually takes the emotion down a notch, because it's in your emotional side of your brain and you're like emoting. Well, then you wrap language around it and you pull it over in the rational space in your brain, and then that takes some of the emotionality out of it. So that's the first thing, is name it. The second thing is normalize it. And people are going to think I'm giving them a pass because some of our emotions are sinful. That's a thing, okay? But the reality is that we are part of humanity, and we need to connect and realize that it's not us, that we're not defective. God made us the way that he made us, and he knew we were going to be this way. And so we go, you know what? It's normal for people to have emotional reactions in some
mm.
of these situations. And so that in and of itself is a comforting kind of thing, and it takes things down another notch. And there's actual data behind this from universities, double-blind, reliable, valid, which shows that these things actually work. And it's de-escalating. So that's a comforting step. The other thing that we can do to comfort, and that's our third step, is to, this sounds weird, but rub our arms. And what that does is it releases the hormone serotonin. And you do 90 seconds of that, or grab your favorite golden retriever, or, hey, I really need a hug right now. And we'll go get some physical contact. And serotonin takes the stress hormone, cortisol, and goes, shh, it's okay, it's okay. Shh, 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 shh. And that lowers our level of oomph as well, takes more of the emotionality out of it. So it's name, normalize, and comfort. And then after that, our brain is in a space where we can be an adult. We can
Yeah.
think rationally. And that's where we ask God, okay, what's really true here? And, in that situation with my husband, God just revealed, here's your circumstance. He's been traveling. You guys miss each other. This isn't about the horse thing at all. It's really about the two of you needing to connect. It's like, yeah, that's great. And I could hear that.
Mm.
And, sometimes in that gentle truth moment, the Lord will say to me, that kind of snarky comment you made before he made the snarky comment that set you off, that hurt him as well. You did the same thing to him. and I won't even see it because I've gone blind because I'm drowning in cortisol.
Sure.
You know? Yeah.
Yeah, that tracks exactly what Scripture that says, "Take every thought captive
Yes.
to the obedience of Christ." So we're having these thoughts. You're saying don't deny that you're having the thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
Recognize that you're having
Yeah.
those thoughts. Identify those negative thoughts. Take a moment to come down, and then make your brain, your mind, obedient to
Mm-hmm.
Christ, and
Yeah.
react in that way. So yeah, no,
Yeah.
that's a very practical
Mm-hmm.
process of a very scriptural
Mm-hmm.
idea.
Yeah, and we're able at that point to then take responsibility for our part.
Mm,
And sometimes we can even go downstairs and interact with someone who was upset too and help them name and normalize and bring them comfort and help them see their part,
yeah,
and then we're able to do things differently. And that, being able to hear the Lord is key to all of this.
yeah, it is. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm assuming, do you know Dr. Emerson Eggerichs?
Yes.
So you touch on something that he wrote a whole book about,
Yeah.
and it was probably the single most helpful thing in my marriage, because I had ridden what he calls the crazy train, or crazy
Yes.
cycle, one of the two. And that's the dynamics, especially in the male and female, in a relationship, especially in a marriage relationship, of love and respect. What's your take on that?
It's interesting. Those two concepts are spoken differently to the genders, right? So women are told to respect their husbands, and husbands are told to love their wives, love and honor, and women are told to submit as well. But there's
Well,
dialogue there.
so are
What
men.
happens?
Men are told to submit as well.
Yes, it's mutual submission.
Yeah.
That's where things work.
Mm.
Actually, that's when marriage is good. Is when both people are doing that. Thank you for bringing that up. You're absolutely right. When and there's people that will argue with you about that, which that means they've never worked in corporate America and don't exactly understand how that works. Because think of the boss that was terrible and very directive. You don't want to work for him. Anyway, what we've looked at that as is a defensiveness and off taking offense cycle. And so, when you work in America, in corporate America, you understand the language of business, which originated as a man's language, which is the language of respect. And so men don't interrupt each other unless they're trying to take control of a conversation. There's data behind that. Women interrupt each other all the time. We talk over each other all the time to participate.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Yeah. And so when we're going to communicate with a man, we need to understand that if we interrupt him, because of the culture and his wiring and his experience, he's going to feel that that's an attack. And it's not his fault, and it's not our fault, but he's been kind of trained by the culture that that's how it works, because that's how it is at work.
Have you been talking to my wife? That is one of my pet peeves. But my wife and her sister literally talk at the same time in order to have a conversation and get along great. And I don't get it.
Right. Yeah, that's the thing. And women that sit quietly and don't say anything are hard to connect with for other women.
Yeah.
So it is possible to learn to master both things, and then you get groups of people together, and you got to deal with that differently. But the point is that we need to meet people where they are at, just like Christ did. And so women want to be seen and heard and feel loved, and our husband needs to understand what that means for his wife, because it looks different in different marriages.
Yes, and there's another dynamic at play. I have two sons and I have two daughters, and it's a whole different ballgame when the girls come home, because they're all somewhat out of the house now, versus when the boys come home. So us three boys, this is how we spend quality time together. We sit down and we watch a hockey game or maybe a football game. Usually it's hockey, and that is a bonding time for us, and we only talk to each other during the commercials or maybe the breaks. But if I do that with my wife and she wants to talk during something that I want to pay attention to, and I act like you're interrupting because she is. But if that's the way, if I don't see that there's that inherent difference,
Mhm.
and man, I'm sure it's not true for everybody, but it's pretty
Right.
darn generally true, then I will miss the opportunity to connect with her because what
Mhm.
happens is by the time the commercial hits and I'm ready to have a side conversation, she's already frustrated because I'm ignoring her.
Right.
It's just a completely different dynamic.
Yeah. Yeah. And how else would God sharpen us without throwing some heat in there, right?
Oh,
Yeah. And so when men are in that situation of, hey, baby, I really want to hear what you say, and I'm dying to know how this play ends. Can you hang on for just a few minutes?
oh, even better. The ability to pause TV, I think, is saving
Yes.
marriages across the
Yes.
world.
Yes. Yes.
Because
Yes.
I have learned when she comes and she, especially if it's sports, you can kind of get by. But if I'm watching something where you need to hear the dialogue and things,
Hmm.
if she walks in and she may just start talking, or
Hmm.
she may stop and pause, and so I know she wants to say something, I'll just hit that pause, and it is a marriage saver. It is a gift from God.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
Pausing TV is a gift from God. I am convinced. So I'll just go on the record there. All right, we got just a few more minutes left. Um, it's Valentine's Day, so I don't know. Give us a little pep talk on how we can just keep the marriage um, going, take it to the next level, make it good again. Whatever it is you think we need to hear to make this Valentine's Day a really good one.
I think the best thing you can do is start a new hobby together,
Oh
maybe
wow.
even dancing. And you can be terrible at it. But if you go to community or something like that and you take community dance lessons together, it'll build your friendship.
You got you
You're,
got you got any other suggestions? My wife hates dancing.
okay. So then brainstorm. There's two things. Do an activity your spouse likes,
There you
right?
go. Yeah.
But come up with something new that neither one of you have any experience with and start doing that together, even if you're bad at it,
Hmm.
because you'll still have something in common that's new and it'll fire all these awesome hormones in your brain that will bond you together better. And you'll take each other for granted less because that's a thing. And then,
Yeah.
and that's another piece of this too, is being grateful, daily grateful, because whatever we're digging a trench in our brain, that's how things are going to keep going. So if it's not working so hot right now, stop thinking the way you're thinking. Look
Yeah.
for space where they're doing something right, call attention to that, and be appreciative of what your spouse is doing. And you know what? When we're not doing that, we are judging,
Hmm.
and that's not our seat.
Hmm.
So,
Yeah. Oh, good word. This is Nina Roesner. She's the author of the book 12 Truths to Change Your Marriage and the author of the Respect Dare. Tell me real quick, what is the Respect Dare? We didn't touch on that.
it's like an experience. It's a devotional, 40 days, where you dig through some of your stuff and experience God on a whole new level, and it positively impacts your marriage. Now, if you don't have boundaries, don't do the book because that's not helpful. But if you have boundaries and you know who you are in Christ, it will deepen your relationship and it will make your husband feel really special. And then we hear things like what he's asking her, how can I love you better?
Oh,
So
well, yeah. All right. One more thing. You've also got a conference coming up that people can participate in, and I want you to let them know about that and how they can be a part of it.
So we have something called the Strength and Dignity Conference, and it is July 16 through 19 here in Milford, Ohio, is where we host it, which is right next to Loveland. Anyway, it's on our website at greaterimpact.org. And so if you go there and scroll down just a teeny bit, you'll find the link and you can go find out more about that. And at the very least, you can get some tips on how to improve your marriage.
That's always a helpful thing. I'm looking for the website so I can show it to people real quick. And there it is. All right. So this is the website for greaterimpact.org. If you want to be a part of the conference, check that out. And if you want to know more about Nina or her book, you can check those things out. There is NinaRoesner.com, Roesner, as you can see right there. And then, of course, the book, 12 Truths to Change Your Marriage. So, hey, it's Valentine's Day, people. Get on out there and make your marriage better. And if you're not married and you think you will be someday, get ahead of the game. Get these things ingrained so you don't have to go through the pain that people like me have had to go through in the growing and the stretching. I got married when I was 21, so I was young, and I had a lot of learning and growing to do. So people that are getting married later in life, I'm like, hey, prepare for this. It'll just make things so much better when you get in there. Anyway, Nina, thank you. Appreciate your time. Appreciate you being with us. And thank all you guys for watching, for commenting, and being a part of Life Today Live. It's Friday, so it'll be Monday again before I see you guys. But I will be here on Monday, even though the rest of the office is closed for the holiday. And I will see you again every day right here on Life Today Live. All these locations, 1800 UTC, that's 12 noon Central Time, my time. See you again next time.